ila wewe usisahau kuomba, na kila unapoomba nikuombee, kwani maombi yangu pekee hayawezi. Nikuombee, kwani maombi yangu pekee hayawezi. Such a beautiful song by Bensoul. I love that song. I love it so much, but I don't know all the words. I just know the chorus. It's a beautiful song. I have to practice every word and know all the words and sing it so well, right? That's what I want. It's a nice song, you know. It takes you, I feel like it takes me to the presence of God, right? You know, it talks about faith, having faith in God and asking Him for whatever you want, right? It's such a nice song, you know. It's beautiful. I love it. Anyway, that was just a warm up. So let's get to the main topic. And I'll ask a question. What comes to your mind when someone tells you to imagine a construction worker during lunchtime? Also, what comes to your mind when someone tells you to imagine a CEO? How do these people look like? When you're asked to describe them, how would you describe them? Or even a nurse, or HR, or CFO, or whichever profession, right? How would you imagine these guys? But just think about these two that I've given you. And I'll just tell you a short story. It's a long story, but I'll just tell you part of it. There was a time I was taking my car. I had taken my car to the car wash. And I had taken it at around 6 p.m. So it was around now 8 p.m. and I was going back to get it. I was going to get it from the car wash. Then I passed a watchman, you know, like a security guy. And he was catcalling. And I felt really offended. I don't like that. I don't like that because that's actually sexual assault. So I confronted him and I told him to behave. And he insulted me so much. He was so abusive. And it was even to the point that I felt like he's going to beat me, like he was going to attack. It was that bad. So I was so upset and I told him I'm going to the police. And he said, go, I don't care. So anyway, I left that place and went and got my car. Then I drove back. I drove back and passed the guy and stopped and told him again, you know what? I am actually going to report you to the police. And he said, what do you mean? Who are you? Then he recognized me and said, are you the lady who was passing here? Are you the lady who was passing? You know, he looked shocked. Because apparently, what he was thinking in his head, I suppose, is that whoever he was abusing could not have owned a car. No way. Because he imagined a lady just walking, going somewhere, but not someone who owns a car. So according to him, anybody who was walking there does not own a car. At least that is what I think he imagined. But anyway, yes, I took him to the police, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, let's talk about this unconscious bias after this short break. Hi guys, welcome back. Okay, so let's get on to our topics right away. And we'll start with the construction worker. Have you imagined your construction worker already? So let's say the construction worker during lunchtime. If somebody asks me about this construction worker, I'll first imagine a man. A man in dirty overalls and having lunch in a kibanda somewhere, you know. And the lunch would probably be ugali and boga and nyama, or maybe githeri and porridge, you know. Yeah. So if someone asks me to imagine a construction worker at lunch, that's that's the first thing I'd probably think about. But then the twist here is, what if this construction worker is a lady? Hmm? And more so, a new mom. How do you know the construction worker is a new mom? Because during lunchtime, her baby is brought to her for breastfeeding. So this construction worker during lunchtime is sitting somewhere breastfeeding her baby during lunch hour, right? Can you see the bias? So this is where we talk about unconscious bias, guys. This is where we talk about unconscious or implicit bias. So already I have that stereotype in my head that when I'm talking about a construction worker, it has to be a man in dirty overalls. I wouldn't think of a woman breastfeeding a baby during lunch hour as a construction worker. So it's like in my mind, I'm already decided that some jobs are for men and some are for women. You know where that, without even realizing that I have this bias in my head, I'm already, projecting it, showing it. Like, how would a woman be a construction worker? Right? And then also when let's talk about when someone says you imagine a CEO, right? How would you imagine a CEO? For me, I would imagine someone wearing a very nice suit, very sleek, huh? So, what if this CEO is someone wearing very casual clothes? Hmm? Someone having dreadlocks? And I'm saying dreadlocks because you remember there was a time years ago, especially in the media industry, where journalists with dreadlocks were actually not being hired because of the dreadlocks. It was so bad. I mean, the discrimination was not good. So yeah, there was that time then. So you wouldn't imagine a CEO having long dreadlocks. But it happens. I know there are CEOs who do have the dreadlocks. But if someone tells me to imagine a CEO, I wouldn't imagine a CEO looking like that. Yeah, but that's just my bias. And I know everybody has a bias. These are biases that we have created over years, from our interactions with people, from family, from friends, people who have influence over us. Yeah. So those are the things I would imagine. Even at work, um, say somebody is applying for a job, and then they probably don't have, they use African names to apply for a job. Let's say maybe they're applying for a job somewhere out of Africa, maybe in the States or somewhere like that. But they have the African names, they use African names. And then another person, this I saw in some research, and then another person uses their English names, or the same person uses English names to apply for the same job. So there are two applications, but the only difference is change of name. And then this person who used the English names is actually called to interviews. many interviews, and the one using the African names is not called at all. Yeah. So it's just mind blowing that there are stereotypes. Sometimes people are not aware of these biases. Actually, that's why it's called unconscious bias. Because you're not aware that you have this bias. Yeah. Or these biases that we have right now in Kenya, about our tribes and stuff. For example, the Luo from my tribe, Luo tribe, people are imagined to be so extravagant. So you find the Luo who is not, and you're like, are you sure you're a Luo? Because you're not using your money the way you're expected to, the kind of things that people have already placed in their heads. They expect you to be this, and you're different. And I remember in my Facebook Live, I gave an example of a billionaire that I know. You wouldn't tell he's a billionaire. He's old, he wears dirty clothes. He's a loner. Well, he likes talking to kids here. He's very talkative. But you wouldn't tell, because you don't expect a billionaire to be wearing dirty clothes and, walking. He owns no car, no bike, nothing. As in, he just has a house. So you can't tell where he's invested his money. He's so unpredictable. You can't tell that this guy is actually wealthy. But he is. But anybody else looking at him would think, this guy is homeless. You think he's so homeless. So those are the stereotypes that we create, and it affects our lives so much because we miss out. Sometimes we miss out on good employees because we already have a bias, that unconscious bias. We already have a bias. We're like, the person who looks like this cannot do this. You don't give the person the chance to know them, right? You don't give them the chance to know them. And I also read in a research, it's so interesting that sometimes when you're made aware of this bias, and you try to avoid it, that's when now you project it even more, because it comes from overcompensation and unsuccessful suppression of this bias. So you try to suppress it, but you find that you even show it more. So it's the same way we raise kids. When you're raising your kids, how do you want your kids to grow? Do you want them? I read somewhere that if your kids haven't grown up with other kids who maybe have challenges, maybe disabilities, you try to teach them to be understanding of other people, to understand that people are different, so that when they see someone who has a disability, they wouldn't find it funny and start laughing at them or something like that. So kids learn from their parents or their caregivers. So how you speak, the kids also learn to speak like that. Whatever you do, they learn from you. Whatever biases you have, like you say, teachers who look like this are like this. The kids will also grow up knowing these teachers are like this, right? So I was trying to read how to avoid it, but the only way to avoid it is by not, trying to be all inclusive. By all means, even in organizations, you try to be all inclusive. and to try to, if there's a case that comes up, maybe probably about racism or something like that, you try to address it before it becomes something else. You address it as soon as possible. Whoever has this, trait, you find a way of addressing it. If it's a culture that you don't want in your organization, because once it's not addressed, once it's left unaddressed, it just becomes something else. So this unconscious bias, it's everywhere, and actually almost everybody has it. Most of us have thought things about other people, things that are not true, right? You've given them a character before you even interact with them. So I think the best thing to do is to always give people chances to interact with them, to know them, before you even say something, before you decide something about someone. How about talk to them, and know their point of view? Because people are different. And I also read somewhere that Facebook, Starbucks, and Google are now doing the unconscious bias training, because it's actually a big thing. It's a big thing, and it causes conflicts, conflicts that can be avoided, right? So when someone tells you maybe a trait that you have that you're not aware of, like you're racist, sometimes you don't take it kindly, but you have to sit down and think, why did this person say I'm racist? What have I done to show that I'm racist? And probably when you sit down and think about it, you'll find there's so many things that actually point towards racism, right? But that's just life. So we find a way to avoid it. Personally, I don't know if unconscious bias training can work. But it's good to be aware of these biases that we have. It's good to be aware and to address them. It's such a wide topic. It's so mind-blowing and confusing. But the thing is, the main point is it's good to be aware of our biases, right? The biases that we have. And it's good to, before we decide something about someone, how about interact with them, So anyway, guys, that's unconscious bias part 1. We'll continue next time. So have a great evening, and na kila unapomba nikuombe, kwani maombi yangu peke hayawezi. Niombe, nikuombe, kwani maombi yangu peke hayawezi. I'm going to practice. Bye guys. Till next time.